Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 33.3 News. My name is Trey Harris, and boy, do we have an exciting show for you. As you can see, AI Kabalah and the image of the beast. This is going to be a follow-up. Thank you for making that loud noise, computer. Been logged into this computer for 3 hours, and that's the first time it wanted to do that. But this is going to be a follow-up on our hot topic that we did earlier this week. I want to make sure that people understand why that video was made, and there are some edits that I do have to make to it, for clarity's sake and things like that. But but for people who didn't see it, I'm going to try to pull it up real quick if I can and let you watch it, and then we'll go from there. Not that. I forgot desktop always does that. It'll play your video if you're not careful. So let's come down here to screen share, and we'll go from here. There we go. And it's right here. My name is Trey Harris, and this is this week's hot topic. So maybe somebody can help me understand what's going on here with all of these videos that seem to be popping up lately regarding either powerful people or famous people, and the fact that they seem to be being swapped out for androids, which sounds far-fetched. I totally get that. Except the video evidence is rather compelling. Now, what you're seeing on your screen is a video that somebody had recorded with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, except there's something off about the former Duchess here. Notice how her face is not moving at all. Now, I have worked around mannequins long enough to where I can tell the difference between something that is human and something that is not. And there definitely is something off here. Now, normally... All right, so here's what I want to do on this. So a listener was gracious enough to point out that part of the video that you just saw, and I did not know this, so I do want to clarify the mistake here on my part, and I should have done a little more due diligence on this. So I apologize about this, but this was this comes from a wax museum apparently, and it is. And I mean, I did not even realize it until literally right before the right before I had read this comment, I started looking at the rest of them because somebody else had pointed out that Harry looked rather odd there too. And then I noticed everybody in that looked like they were from the Hall of Presidents. And those of you who have been to Disney World, you know what I'm talking about. It's full of animatronic, images of the presidents and things like that. I remember going as a kid; it freaked me out. Something felt off. Like, I was scared. I was literally scared of the Hall of Presidents. But it's a wax museum apparently. And so I do want to thank the listener for pointing that out. However, I also want to just say that the listener made some points that, may be valid about the video, about, guys, the reality of the matter is I have, with these hot topics, I try to keep them under 10 minutes long for social media, because they're designed to be shareable. And unfortunately, I picked a topic, and this is my fault. I picked a topic that it's way too hard to, get everything you need to say about this in that time frame. So and that's why I want to talk about this, because, for those of you who may be familiar with this subject matter, I'm sure you may have followed right along with me. But for people who aren't familiar with the subject matter, I don't know if this listener was familiar with it or not. This can seem like a bunch of just stuff that's thrown together. And while I think that was a fair point to make for that video, I also would like to point out that this isn't just nonsense. And I'm going to show you that tonight. I don't want you guys to think that I just pick these topics willy-nilly and just, oh, this sounds cool, I'll do this. These are topics that I see and I observe that are going around and, are rather popular with people at times. And I like to try to take it, and they're often controversial subjects. That's why it's called the hot topic. And I try to take that and see if we can find anything about what the Bible says about it. I don't just do it for the sake of doing it. I do it because sometimes there's genuine deception. Now with this one, I messed up. I didn't check, deep enough into that video. And I'll be honest, I feel like part of that is justified because of what I'm going to show you. Because of this next clip right here. This is supposed to be Harry and Meghan at the Britain's Got Talent, finale in the audience. So let's play this one. Makes me even more, I guess, was more eyebrow raising to me is the fact that there is what you would call a pleasure bot from. All right, so we're going to pause this video right here for just a second, because this is, and look, they're both looking, rather bad again. And so this is what the official story on this is. This is an article from, thenews.com. What an original name. But it says an old video purporting to show Meghan Markle continues to circulate on social media a couple of years after it first emerged on the internet. The video had gone viral, and it was shared with captions that suggested the person seen in the clip was in fact a robot instead of the Duchess of Sussex. After coming across the video, many people seem convinced that Meghan Markle is a robot. And I mean, whether it's replaced her, there is a robot version of her. Nobody can argue with that. I would, but look, let's just go on. It says the clip The clip shows the royal couple sitting in an audience and applauding, but their faces aren't moving. According to the reports, the video was from Britain's Got Talent finale, and the royal appearance was actually a stunt to promote the new live figures exhibit at Madame Tussauds London. Which and maybe that's true. I don't know. I think that's an odd stunt to do it. I mean, my goodness, you have video of the whole first video was that. So I mean, I don't know. I think it's weird. I'm skeptical when they say things like this, because here's the reality. Is or is it not possible for people to be replaced by robots? Well, we'll find out more about this and how it ties into, potential things with the end times as we go out through today's episode of 33.3 News. All right, so let's get right back into this. Look, when it comes to this, I want to show this first if I can, because this is what started it all for me. And this is a video from Facebook, but I just want to show, the reason I want to show you this is because when it comes to, these androids, the technology's in place. First and foremost, whether or not they're using it, you decide for yourself, but the technology is in place. I'm going to play this real quick, and we will go from there. First off, I got to figure out why this one's not making any sound. Oh, because I don't have the sound on. That would be a good reason not to make sound. There we go. And this may be a little loud, so I apologize. I don't know anybody that doesn't think that Mark Zuckerberg is either a lizard in a skin suit or a robot. But he definitely does not act human, that's for sure. But I just, wanted to point that out. Like, that's a weird dude. Now, of course, there's this video from Madame Tussauds. All right, so look, like I said, I wanted to show that for one reason, mainly, is because they've got lifelike replicas of, other people. What they're using them for, I have absolutely no clue. That I could not tell you. But what I do know is that the technology obviously exists. And honestly, the Madame Tussauds animatronic wax figurines or whatever is just proof of that. And you'll say, but maybe they're not. And so what I tried to do was, and on my phone this worked. It's not looking like it's working on the Google desktop, but it when I looked up, so like here's the Britain's Got Talent, and I just realized you can't see this, so let me switch back over. So here's the Britain's Got Talent, right there. And like I said, maybe it was some sort of weird publicity stunt. I don't know. And quite frankly, I think it's irrelevant. Because what I'm going to show you, I believe it gives a reason of why things like this would happen. I believe they're normalizing something very specific. And many of you who watch the Hot Topic have already picked up on this. But for those who may be a little confused by it, we'll go on. So, I mean, And there's one that unfortunately I have not seen up here yet. Like I said, when I look it up on my phone, like, so for instance, here's one. So, see if it'll let us pull it up full screen. So, I'm not sure if you guys can see this. But this is one of them. And unfortunately, it's not letting me click on it and zoom in. But this is another one. And maybe this is more displays of, this Madame Tussauds stuff. Maybe it is. I don't know. What I do know is they don't look human here either, and this is a completely different place. At least it would appear so in this picture. So I do want to point that out. Let's come. We've got more over here. Here's another close-up of that with a different background. Like I said, maybe it's the same thing. I don't know. But, obviously, once again, not human. Human, not human. Human, not human. And here's the robots again at Britain's Got Talent. I don't know. That just seems like an awful lot of work for that. In fact, what it is I believe it could be normalizing something else, a publicity stunt for sure. Maybe not for that, though. And I want to come over here and show you this for those of you who may not be familiar with this. So this is the 2045 Strategic Social Initiative. And $10 million X Prize aims for robot avatars that let you see, hear, and feel by 2021. So that's already passed. I wonder if they hit their goal. Let's see. And there's tons of stuff up here. There's articles. There's a specific one I'm looking for, but I can't remember which one it is. Yeah, this is it right here. Ever wished you could be in two places at the same time? The X Prize Foundation wants to make that a reality with a $10 million competition to build robot avatars that can be controlled from at least 100 kilometers away. The competition was announced by X Prize founder Peter Diamandis at the SXSW conference in Austin last week. This was, this has been years ago. This is from, I think, 2018, from March 19th, 2018. So this is, quite a few years old. But it says, with an ambitious timeline of awarding the grand prize by October 2021. Teams have until October 31st to sign up, and they need to submit detailed plans to a panel of judges by the end of next January. The prize, sponsored by Japanese airline ANA, has given contestants little guidance on how they expect them to solve the challenge, other than saying their solutions needed to let users see, hear, feel, and interact with the robot's environment as well as the people in it. So, guys, here's what this is. This is 2018 already. To keep in mind, this is before the metaverse was, before Facebook's rebranding into Meta, all of this. And what this is a robot avatar, an android avatar that will allow you to experience some form of augmented reality. And basically, what it is it gives you the simulation of letting your consciousness jump into a robot, because that's what the 2045 initiative is. It is about the singularity and making sure that transhumanism can go to the next level and people can upload their consciousness into a machine. If you're skeptical about that, I mean, the scientist Michio Kaku has talked about this multiple times, as well as several other scientists. I mean, guys, this stuff is easily findable. I want to focus on this one, though. It says that, it goes on to say, X Prize has also not revealed details of what kind of tasks the robot will be expected to complete, though they've said tasks will range from simple to complex, and it should be possible for an untrained operator to use them. That's a hugely ambitious goal that's likely to require teams to combine multiple emerging technologies, from humanoid robotics to virtual reality, high bandwidth communications, and high resolution haptics. If any of the teams succeed, the technology could have myriad applications, from letting emergency responders enter areas too hazardous for humans to helping people care for relatives who live far away, or even just allowing tourists to visit other parts of the world without the jet lag. Guys, this was a precursor to the metaverse. Quote, our ability to physically experience another geographic location or to provide on-the-ground assistance where needed is limited by cost and the simple availability of time, Diamandis said in a statement. The ANA Avatar X Prize can enable creation of an audacious alternative that could bypass these limitations, allowing us to more rapidly and efficiently distribute skill and hands-on expertise to distant geographic locations where they are needed, bridging the gap between distance, time, and cultures. So that's where, everything has an official story, and then there's an underlying story. This is the official story. Of course, the underlying story, like I said, is the ultimate goal, admitted to by scientists involved with the 2045 initiative, is the singularity, in which they can upload their consciousness into a machine, because they want immortality and they don't want to do it God's way. Is this the bottom line? That's what they have said. Now, of course, I don't think that part is possible, but I 100% believe, and you will never not convince me of this, when you look at fashion magazines and you look at all of this, People and Us Weekly and all of these other, BS tabloids and things like that, who are the trendsetters they go to? They go to Hollywood and they go to the royal family. Those are the trendsetters. So why would it be any different with a situation like this, where they're trying to normalize this being in two places at once? They're trying to normalize, this singularity, things like that. And you're going to say, well, then why wouldn't they just come out and say it? I mean, there's, the fact of the matter is that you have to get it normalized in people's head, the idea of this concept. See, in my experience, and maybe I'm wrong here, but in my experience, what you typically have is, if technology progresses too fast, people get very, very, very hesitant about it. Change is uncomfortable for very many people. And of course, you've always got your trendsetters that have to have the newest iPhone like the day it comes out. I used to go to church with a lot of those people. But the very idea of artificially intelligent androids and all of this walking around in everyday life is scary and off-putting to a lot of people. And so, of course, you normalize it subliminally through showing that, the royal family has copies of themselves that are going places under the guise of, well, there's a new exhibit. Like I said, I don't know why you couldn't just do an unveiling ceremony of that and broadcast it on the news. I mean, my goodness, they show so many other fluff pieces on the news. Why not that? There's all of this. This is just my theory. Like I said, I could be wrong here, but you'll never not convince me that they won't use these people to help normalize it, because that's what they always do. That's what they always do. They always go to Hollywood, and they always go to these elites, especially the royal family, to help normalize things like this. So, switch back over to the screen for a minute, and it says, interestingly, the technology may help bypass an enduring handbrake on the widespread use of robotics, autonomy. By having a human in the loop, you don't need nearly as much artificial intelligence analyzing sensory input and making decisions. Robotic software is doing a lot more than just high-level planning and strategizing, though. While a human moves their limbs instinctively without consciously thinking about which muscles to activate, controlling and coordinating a robot's components requires sophisticated algorithms. The DARPA Robotics Challenge demonstrated just how hard it was to get a human-shaped robot to do tasks humans would find simple, such as opening doors, climbing steps, and even just walking. Now, keep in mind, this was written in 2018. They now have hotels that are staffed exclusively by robots now in Japan. So they've moved way past this by now. Like I said, the technology is in place and has been in place. And I believe it probably happened around this 2021 date, because, like I said, 2045, they want the singularity to happen. They want a lot of this stuff to be in place by 2025, believe it or not. So these robots were supposedly semi-autonomous, but on many tasks, they were essentially teleoperated, and the results suggest that autonomy isn't the only problem. And what they do like this is it helps them recruit, the scientists who are capable of this, yada, yada. You guys get the routine. It's what they do. So there's that. Let's come over here to this one. Now, because you have to look at it, we have to stop looking at this in the vein of the here and now. Any time we do this and we look at it in the vein of the here and now, we're going to miss things, plain and simple. So, excuse me. I want to read this for you if I can. Because I want to get into, if we can, the kind of some of the biblical side of this. So let's go ahead and move into our end times report. All right. So, Revelation chapter 13. I'm going to start in verse 11. And I wish I could have it pulled up on the screen for you, but I haven't figured out how to rope in eSword to this particular streaming software. Because even though everything looks the same, I'm actually in a completely different system. So it says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Now, 2 weeks ago, we talked about how this is the false prophet. I believe this is the unification. This false prophet will unify the Roman Catholic Church, Eastern Orthodoxy, before he tears them both down to officially rope in his apostate religion. And this has a little bit to do with that. I believe there's multiple levels of interpretation that we can look at here. And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly head wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying unto them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a head sword and did live. Now here's where it gets interesting to me, because I believe this is one of those false miracles that he's going to do. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Now, if you were to take your Strong's Concordance and you were to look up that word image used in Revelation chapter 13, that is the word icon. Kind of was where we get our word icon from. And this is what it says. This is Strong's Greek word 1504. Icon, and it literally means an image, a likeness, or a portrait. And it is translated image 23 times in the New Testament. Now, we can go farther than this. And we're going to get a little deep into this if we can, because I want to set something up here. This is from Vine's Complete Expository Dictionary. Now, this isn't known as being the best expository dictionary there is, but I've used it a few times and it's not terrible. But this is what this says about icon. It says 1504 denotes an image. The word involves two ideas of representation and manifestation. The idea of perfection does not lie in the word itself, but must be sought from the context. So the following instances clearly show any distinction between the imperfect and the perfect likeness. The word is used, number one, of an image or a coin, not a mere likeness, in Matthew 22:20, Mark 12:16, and Luke 20:24. So a statue or similar representation more than a resemblance. So an edifice, if you will. So because, the coin, he had the image of Caesar on it. That's where he's getting the idea of something carved in, a statue. And so there you go. You got Romans 1:23, Revelation 13:14, thrice, and 15 is what it says, So we have that there. That would fit into that context of a statue, or the descendants of Adam is bearing his image, 1 Corinthians 15:49. Each a representation derived from the prototype. Number two, of a subject relative to things spiritual, Hebrews 10:1, negatively of the law, yada, yada, yada. So you guys get the point. It is, it's used as an image. It's used as a statue, specifically in this passage. Think, when you think of a statue being worshipped, the go-to that we probably all think of is, the image that Nebuchadnezzar set up. But I want to go even farther. This is the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, and this is volume 2. And this is Delta through Hay. And this is what it says about the word icon. All right. So all right. So icon, and it starts with the prohibition of images in the Old Testament. So now here we're gonna this is Gerard Cattell, the editor of these books. This is what an article he wrote. The conviction that Yahweh is not to be depicted in the form of an image is intrinsic to true Yahweh worship. Its basis is to be found in the commandment in Exodus 20, verse 4. In this respect, the official cultist presents a uniform picture. Nowhere in the literature do we find any sign either of deviation from or of development to this position. There is thus no reason to contest the Mosaic basis, for it is indisputable that the fundamental teaching of the commandment concerning a jealous God who cannot be made static gives us a firm reason for the prohibition of images. On the other hand, we must not attempt to analyze the motive, for it is only too easy to reduce the work of Moses to the level of popular religious pedagogy. So, it goes on. Article B is images of God and men in Judaism and Christianity. The ancient prohibition, Exodus 20, verse 4 and 23, Leviticus 26:1, Deuteronomy 4:16, 5:8, and 27:15 had three practical implications: avoidance and, so far as possible, the removal of cultic images of alien gods, the lack of images in the native cultists, and C, the avoidance of representations of men and, partially at least, of other living creatures. The first implication has been self-evident for Jews and Christians in every age, and any violation has been regarded as apostasy. The second has also been strongly emphasized and asserted principle in the Jewish world. So it says, with regard to the picture of animals and stars on the great curtains of the temple, and he refers to Josephus, were not regarded as depiction of deities as one might think. They were merely artistic symbols. In the newly discovered synagogue mosaics of Ain Eduk and Beth Alpha, there is in the middle of the picture of the zodiac a representation of the four-steeded chariot of the sun with Helios as the driver. But even here, the Byzantine artists had no thought of depicting the sun god. They were simply adopting the traditional form of representing the sun. Okay, I would disagree with that one personally, but that's just me. I think whether you intend it that way or not, you still have to be careful. I think all of us would agree with that. Anyway, in relation to the third implication, there were various results in practice. So as far as we can see, Jewish art strongly disliked representations of men and therefore scrupulously avoided them. An ancient principle is that, quote, all pictures are permissible except those of men. Titus, you all right, bud? All right, so I want to go a little farther. So notice so far every instance of this word has been some sort of physical representation of something. So representations of God were obviously just as objectionable to early Christians as to Judaism. Yet it must be remembered that as far as we can see, the question of depicting God or even man or animal never arose at all in the New Testament. Whether from the positive or the negative standpoint, it never entered the head of any early believers to hand down a picture of Jesus or the apostles, let alone to set up a cultic image. The complete lack of interest in this regard marks off the young religion from the syncretistic religions of the surrounding world. The cult image of Mithras The cult images of Mithras is an integral part of the whole cult. The image of Serapis was created with the rise of this religion. There could be no worship of the emperors without statues. In the religion of the Christians, however, the important thing is not worshiping an image and considering the myth thereby depicted, but listening to the word. Only in the 1st and 2nd centuries do we have a development in the catacombs via religious decoration to the painting of Christian symbols and symbolic figures, especially the Good Shepherd, and then to the depiction of Christ and the apostles and other biblical subjects. A model and impulse for this development might have been provided by the newly discovered pre-Christian biblical paintings of the Jews, especially in relation to the Old Testament scenes. Only gradually do we have the formation of a distinctive content and style determined by Christianity itself and producing Christian art. Now, I think it's interesting when you start looking at, especially you start getting into the 2nd century. That was when Gnosticism really started creeping into Orthodoxy, and you can see this in some of the what they would call the New Testament Apocrypha, allegedly, but it is, apostate writings, the Proto-Evangelion, the Gospel of Nicodemus, things like this. They're just garbage. So there's other things you can look at. It talks about, the clash of cult rulers, the cult of rulers or emperors, and, how they had to give, obeisance to these images. That's, of course, basically what the entire story of the Maccabees is about. So, you can read that. We've covered that before. If you want to watch our, Understanding the Abomination, Part 2, where we talk about the image of the beast. But this was a part of that I thought about getting into back then, but just, honestly didn't have the time to sit down and break it down. So, you may be thinking, what does any of this have to do with artificial intelligence? And this is what I want to show you. So this is the commentary of Revelation 13:15 by Adam Clarke. And I do have to just point out here, for the sake of, being honest and upfront, transparent. If you were to read this whole thing, he takes the image of the beast and it having mouths, and he and all of that, and he applies it ultimately to the position of the Pope. But what's interesting is even there's so much evidence of images being able to manifest some semblance of life in the occult, that even Adam Clarke brings this up. At first, he said, I would just observe that the Brahmins, by repeating incantations, profess to give eyes and a soul to an image recently made before it is worshipped, afterwards being supposed to be the residence of the god or goddess it represents. It has a legal right to worship. So that was, basically the Brahmins could say these incantations, and, there would be eyes and a soul, because this part where it says give life to the beast, that literally means to breathe into. Just like in Genesis, God breathed into Adam and he became a living soul, right? This is invoking a blasphemous version of that, and there is evidence of that in the occult as well. So let's come back over to our screen and make sure. Click on that. Yeah, it went back over. So let's come right here. Actually not there yet, this one. Nope, not that one either. I've got these out of order. Sorry, guys. So this is the golem. And this is the techniques for creating a golem. Now, I just want to point this out right here. This is witchcraft. It is sorcery. And this is not anything that a Christian should be practicing. That should be obvious. But I always want to say that because things can get taken out of context. And notice what it says right here. You can see it on the screen. Jewish magic and mystical traditions on the artificial anthropoid. So it says, from a broad sampling of techniques from original sources, see Moshe Adel's Golem, Jewish magic and mystical traditions of the artificial anthropoid. This is a dedicated source, but many other books, fiction and scholarly, discuss the golem.
Although there are many variants and procedures recorded, there seem to be a number of elements and steps common to most methods of creating a golem. These are the ritual cleansing and high qualification of those creating the golem, the use of some form of soil, sometimes clay or dust, to form the body of the golem, particularly soil which has never been plowed or used in any way. The use of verbal ritual, that would be incantation, to form the soil into a human form, a concluding word or name that is used to activate the creature. Guys, this is transmutation. This is alchemy here. We've talked about this so many times in the past that I honestly feel like, I really fear that I'm beating a dead horse here. But this is it. This is the whole goal of the occult. Now, let's look at this a little more. When we talk about this, when we talk about this form of soil, sometimes clay or dust, I want to read this. Because this is a verse we've all heard multiple times, and I can't remember the exact reference here. Okay, yeah, there it is. I knew it was in Daniel, I just couldn't remember what chapter and what verse. So look at this. This is Daniel chapter 2, verse 43. Daniel chapter 2, verse 43, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Now, of course, this is an allusion, I believe, to transhumanism, the angels, the fallen angels trying to mix with men again to create the Nephilim. I believe this is why they're not giant anymore. But notice that here. Look how literally it is taken. The use of some form of soil, sometimes clay or dust, to form the body of the golem, particularly soil which has never been plowed or used in any way. So, we're literally taking the form of clay. So watch this. Medieval techniques of creating a golem often revolved around a highly complex procedure which required the mystic or mystics to recite, presumably from memory and probably while in a state of meditation, an array of Hebrew alphabet letter combinations, and or various permutation of one or more names of God. That's the Kabbalistic. Matter of fact, give me a second. I can tell you exactly what it is. So what do they call this? This is ancient paganism, sorcery, the sorcery of the fallen angels, and it talks a little bit about, what they call this. Yeah, this is, so when you talk about the Hebrew letter combinations and the various permutation of one or more names of God, that is involved with the doctrine of emanations. This is what that comes from. It says Lucifer's lie was this, or I would say Satan, because I don't believe that that's Satan and Lucifer are the same entity. God is not separate from his creation. When God puts his spirit into a newly created being, he loses part of himself. In the Jewish Kabbalah, this concept is called the doctrine of emanations. The doctrine of emanations would become the basis of all future pagan religions on earth and the primary cause of the earth's destruction by a worldwide flood. So this is that coming up again, just like I said, mixing iron with miry clay. I believe this is an allusion to the sorcery of the fallen angels. And, this would seem to say this. So, for example, Eliezer of Worms, in his commentary on Sefer Yetzirah, which is a Kabbalistic book, wrote in a somewhat twisted fashion that after kneading virgin soil from the mountains with pure water, the first stage of creation was to form the limbs of the golem. Limb, in this case, seems also to represent the torso and head. Each limb has a corresponding letter mentioned in Sefer Yetzirah, and this letter is to be combined with every other letter of the Hebrew alphabet to form pairs. Then a more general permutation is done again from each limb separately of each letter of the Hebrew alphabet with every other letter and into letter pairs, each limb separately. So you would do this with each one. The second basic method of combination is called the 221 gates. Then you combine each letter of the alphabet with each vowel sound, apparently for each limb, and that concludes the first stage, the formation of the golem's body. In the second stage, you must combine each letter of the alphabet with each letter of the tetragrammaton. So they're blasphemously using the name of God, which, by the way, is one of the things that it says the beast will do, right? He will have a name of blasphemy on his forehead. And pronounce each of the resulting letter pairs with every possible vowel sound. In this case, the use of the tetragrammaton, even though it is permutated, is the activation word. So notice how it says permutated there. So if you remember, if you're familiar with it, one of the things that Albert Pike said was you could take the letters of the tetragrammaton, reverse it, and it becomes bisexual. That is, of course, referring to the androgynous god of Freemasonry and Kabbalah. Same thing right here. It says, simple, right? For a translation of Eleazar of Worms' original text with the explanations, yada, 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 and simpler variations of Eleazar's technique, the combinations of AB through AK, Aleph Bet to Aleph Kaf, are used to create the golem, and all combinations of Aleph Lamed to Aleph Taf are used to dismantle it. And Abraham Galante, a Kabbalist from Safed, recorded a method of Ashkenazi origin in which the mystics would spread a layer of new dust on the floor of the ground and inscribe the name of the thing they wished to create. They would then combine each letter with the name of that thing with every letter of the name of that thing with every letter of the Hebrew alphabet. To destroy the thing, they would reverse the recitation, which, of course, reversal of things was big in Crowleyan Satanism. The Kabbalists involved in combination techniques were sometimes required to circle the golem in varying numbers of times. One way to create, so this is a summoning circle, which is used to summon demonic entities in books like the Greater and Lesser Key of Solomon, and a lot of these medieval grimoires. King James actually talks about this in his book, Demonology, which I highly recommend everybody read. And so it says in varying numbers of times, one way to create the other to destroy while performing the recitations. If combined with meditative, paced breathing and pronunciation techniques, some of these methods would have taken the Kabbalists 36 hours or more of uninterrupted meditation to complete. So here's another one where the mystic was required to combine the 42-letter name of God and the tetragrammaton in special ways, then inscribe several names on the golem's forehead. Look at this, guys. You cannot make this stuff up. Then inscribe several names on the golem's forehead to bring it to life. Now let's go back. Let's go back to Revelation 13. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. You cannot make this stuff up, guys. Do you see what I mean now? Look, this is what I mean by I should have picked a topic that was easier to talk about in 10 minutes because, I've read all this stuff before, but there's no way you can get this into a 10-minute video. We're almost an hour into this. I'm just getting warmed up. And so there's more stuff you can read about this. But I want to come over here to this one real quick. So this is Adam Golem Robot. based on a talk by Ken Goldberg in 1993 at a Hillel faculty lunch. Now, I don't know what Hillel is, but what I do know is that is the name when you see Lucifer in Isaiah chapter 14. The word translated Lucifer, son of the morning, is Hillel ben Shachar. That's what it is. Hillel ben Shachar is what is translated Lucifer, son of the morning. So I find that extremely interesting. But it was a lunch at the University of Southern California, organized by Susan Lamel with Tamara Eskenazi, professor of biblical studies of Hebrew Union College, and a follow-up conversation between Ken Goldberg and Ovid Jacob in San Francisco of 1995. So he said, let's consider the archetype of the creature in Western literature by examining the potential linkage between Adam, golem, and robot. The well-known story of Adam and Eve is told in the second and third in chapters 2 and 3 of Genesis. Initially, Adam and Eve live in a state of innocent bliss in the garden. God tells them they cannot eat from any tree with the pointed exception they can eat from any tree with the pointed exception of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The serpent suggests to Eve that eating from this tree will open her eyes and make her wise. And she and Adam cast aside caution and eat, and God appears, and they hide. He asks why they are wearing fig leaves, and Eve confesses, blaming the serpent. Then Adam confesses, blaming Eve, the woman you gave me. Actually, it happened in the opposite way. It was Adam first and then Eve. In effect, blaming God. God responds with a threefold punishment. Woman will experience pain during childbirth. Men and women will no longer be pampered, but must work, and they become mortal. This is what Ovid Jacob says. So they're going to, talk about Joseph Campbell, who, is the one who talked about the mythological archetype of the hero. Joseph Campbell points out that before the biblical myth of creation, there were other compelling myths in that region, with different interpretations of the garden, the tree, and the serpent. His Occidental mythologies has some of this. Check out some of my thoughts: the tree, the ladder, the chariot, and the self. One interesting thing I want to mention is that though we lost the tree of life and the tree of knowledge after we were expelled from the garden, subsequently Kabbalists figured out a way to get back in. Thus, Moses Cordovero, in his Garden of Pomegranates, which is the Pardes Remonim, which, by the way, the Pardes method of, biblical interpretation from the Kabbalah, that word Pardes literally, it means paradise or garden. But this is in the 1500s. He explores this, and you can see Skolem's Kabbalah for more details, which I don't recommend, guys. But that's just me. This stuff will really get a hold of you unless you are grounded in the Word. When we consider these conditions, pain, work, and the recognition of mortality, this is what Ken says, we realize that they define the condition of being an adult. In effect, the consequences of their act of disobedience or rebellion facilitates their maturing into full human beings. Their expression of free will transforms them from passive innocence to responsible leaders. So it seems like he's talking about this like it's a good thing. But what about God's reaction? Was God so angry, or was God secretly pleased with the inevitable consequence of his creations? I've been told about an essay on this, but can't find it. Did they fall, or were they pushed? I propose the following thesis. The event wherein the Creator loses control of the creature is a necessary step towards the development of the creature. The reading of creation story runs counter with the traditional Christian view of the fall of origin of sin. So notice this. Now we're getting into, and he talks about the reading of creation story runs counter to the traditional Christian view of fall origin of sin advocated by St. Augustine, a Gnostic, and Milton, talking about John Milton, who wrote Paradise Lost. But I think it's somewhat consistent with the Jewish readings of the story, which do not agonize over the events in the garden. A very interesting thesis and an interesting point regarding evil, indeed. In Kabbalah, evil has its place. The complications which come with loss of control seem part of the process, as you point out. Now, if you know anything about the Jewish interpretation or the, overall Kabbalistic form, Judaism and even parts of Christianity and the Hebrew roots movement look at Satan as an agent of God, he's just doing God's will by tempting man and doing all of this. They look at Satan as his evil is actually part of God's plan. Because when you really get into the deep parts of the Kabbalistic belief, and you can see this through the writings of Eliphas Levi, that Eliphas Levi just said that Satan was just God being bad. He literally would look at God and Satan and call them the white Jehovah and the black Jehovah. That is what Eliphas Levi brought forth out of these Kabbalistic teachings. And so, but anyway, Ovid said a very interesting thesis and an interesting point regarding evil. Indeed, in Kabbalah, evil has its place. The complications which come with loss of control seem part of the process, as you point out. Let's now look at the next component of this linkage, the golem. I use this term as a shorthand to refer to a story that arises with variations in many cultures, mythology, and folklore. Prometheus, Icarus, Faust, the Sorcerer's Apprentice, Frankenstein, the Hasidic tale of the golem. So, like I said, this stuff is everywhere in the occult if you know where to look. So the archetype generally describes a human who creates a creature that comes to life. Initially, the creator takes great pride and delight in the creature until at some point the creature takes a life of its own and runs amok. At the end, the creator pays the consequences for this act of hubris. So an interesting point that many may not know, and like I said on the Daily Show, I really want to get into this on the Daily Show on the Substack page, because I have been, and one of the things I have been my whole life, and now mainly from a different perspective, but I used to be a really big Lord of the Rings fan. And I have almost, as far as the main ones, like I've got The Hobbit, I've got all the Lord of the Rings books, I've got the Silmarillion, I've got the Unfinished Tales, I've got all of it. I don't have the Lost Tales, but I do have the Unfinished Tales. And, I've got The Children of Hurin, which was the first full-length novel published after Tolkien's death. I've got all of this stuff. But one thing that's interesting is there's a tale based on the golem in the Silmarillion, because the dwarves of the Lord of the Rings mythology were not created by Eru Iluvatar, which is the creator god of the Middle-earth mythos. No, they were actually created by one of the Valar, which is like a pantheon of almost like Greek gods. And they're giants, by the way. Very interesting. But he creates these dwarves. And, as a way of, Tolkien says he was, trying to be like his creator and make something. And Iluvatar had such mercy on him that he actually allowed these dwarves to live, which is basically the glorifying of this occult practice, which you will find throughout the Middle-earth books. Now, I find that interesting because, like I said, it's everywhere, but it says, so Ovid says, there's a book by Gustav Meyrink, Der Golem, published in 1925 or so. There's an English translation of this, and I also have a Romanian translation I got in 1991, plus, of course, the great 1925 Expressionist German film. Interestingly, it is rarely a woman who plays this role. For a feminist perspective on the subject, see Donna Haraway's Cyborg Manifesto, as well as Jenny Kuhl's essay on it. And the other guy says, each variant of this story has the same basic message. It is a mistake to overreach, especially in the realm of science. Don't mess with Mother Nature. During the Middle Ages, the edict was enforced by the church. Only the mystical and secretive alchemists persisted in trying to create homunculi, or artificial men. As a vivid example, recall the response of the Manhattan physicists when they witnessed the awesome potential of their creation. By then, it had gotten away from them, and Oppenheimer, the man who created the atomic bomb, and Oppenheimer suffered a Promethean downfall. I don't know if that's the same Oppenheimer, but when I hear Oppenheimer, that's who comes to mind. Just want to point that out just in case it's not him. But he says, I have a different take on this. In the story of the golem, the rabbi brought the creature to life only when it was a clear need to defend the Prague Jewish community from expulsion. It was meant to be a short-lived measure, which is in Meyrink's version. So is tempering the power of creation, but in a very circumscribed way. You know, the Manhattan Project physicist, so yeah, it's the same Oppenheimer, on the other hand, did not seem to have as much understanding and compassion compared with Rabbi Lowe of the dimensions involved in building such an awesome instrument of destruction as the atomic bomb. Oppenheimer, one of the few in the group who did worry about the implications of the atomic bomb work, realizes some of the implications, but too late to affect the decision of whether to drop the bomb or where to do that. The creators have lost control of the creature, the bomb, but this has had grave consequences. Maybe necessary, but grave nonetheless. Perhaps the lessons we might learn from this is to temper our learning with the compassion and wisdom, otherwise we will destroy ourselves. And so, he talks about, consider the particulars of the Jewish version of this story. After the golem saves the small Jewish community from the consequences of accusation of a blood libel, Rabbi Lowe asks the creature to fetch water from the well. The rabbi goes upstairs to sleep and awakens to discover that the entire house is filled with water. The golem continues dutifully to fetch water until the rabbi tricks it into leaning close enough that the rabbi can erase the first letter inscribed on its forehead, thus changing emet, truth or life, to met, death. Whereupon the golem turns into a lifeless mass of clay, which crushes the rabbi to death. Again, harsh consequences for the creator. The rabbis forgot to specify what computer scientists call a termination condition. The golem went into an infinite loop due to a programming error because he didn't say how much water to fetch, so it just kept going. So if you've ever done coding, I've only done a very little bit when I have to fix something that I've done, like on a website or something. But you have to be very specific with the commands. If you don't put in the exact measure of what you need, it'll mess you up in a heartbeat. So, but this suggests a subtle point: the loss of control often traced back to some mistake on the part of the creator. And so he talks about the Cornell graduate Robert Morris. I'm not interested in that. And this guy says, I do think it is hubris, the hubris of rationality, yada, yada. And this is what he says. This brings us to the final component of the linkage, the robot. I'd like to differentiate it from the golem by defining robot as a purely mechanical and logical creature whose animation does not derive from spiritual, magical, or alchemical sources, as is the case with the golem. Now, that's where I would actually disagree. Because when you look at, and guys, this is one of those things they teach in predictive programming, especially if you look at the Marvel universe. And now it doesn't have to just be the movies. In the Marvel comics, which is another thing that I've been reading for years. I don't really read them anymore because of their I don't really read them anymore because of their ties with Crowley and Satanism. But one of the things that Iron Man would tell Thor, and you can see this in the cartoons and things like that, Iron Man would tell Thor that magic was just science that hasn't been discovered yet. Because that's what alchemy was considered. It was considered a science. It's the Rosicrucians considered them they consider themselves a scientific order. And of course, the Rosicrucians are the keepers of alchemy. That's literally what Rosicrucianism is it is an alchemy that uses Christian symbolism. And of course, I would consider that blasphemous because, alchemy is magic, and magic is forbidden in the Bible. So, but nevertheless, this is what he says. I characterize the motivation behind creating a robot as pragmatic, to do work, in contrast to the motivation being behind creating a golem, which is to somewhat degree to demonstrate virtuosity. And Ovid says, but I would also like to point out that the golem is emet, alive. The robot is not. Even Frankenstein's monster is made of flesh from another formerly living creature. And so they talk about all of this stuff. But let's look at something real quick. Let's really examine this. Because what is the one thing that you see constantly depicted in movies of artificial intelligence? And I'm not talking about. I'm trying to get you to understand this from a predictive programming standpoint. Is that when you look at this from a predictive programming standpoint, what you are essentially dealing with here is that these things start out as robots, then they become sentient, and they're considered a form of life. So my basic argument here is going from, a robot or an android, when it becomes sentient, it really is more of a golem than it is a robot, because that's what the golem started out as. It started out as a lifeless mass. But then the incantation, the ritual, brings it to life, and it becomes something entirely different. Now, we can also come over, I think it's this one, but let's look at this one real quick. So this is the golem in the age of artificial intelligence. The golem is one of the earliest artificial intelligence AI prototypes. Originally a Jewish myth about an anthropoid figure of clay that was brought to life by virtue of Kabbalistic theurgy. The golem reincarnated time and again, carrying throughout the ages deeply rooted anxiety and fascination concerning the prospect of intelligent and sentient technology going out of human control. Although designed to be an obedient, effective, and formidable sort of low-tech robot, the golem, in most stories, becomes independent of its masters and eventually wreaks havoc upon its human creators. Since its very early appearances in Talmudic texts, the golem gained a considerable reputation in popular culture and frequently appeared in literature, most famously by Gustav Meyrink's 1915 Der Golem. And comic books, both Marvel and DC have their golem versions. So think of something like Solomon Grundy as sort of, from DC, as sort of a golem, which, by the way, the Incredible Hulk is based off of Solomon Grundy, for people who didn't know that. That's why he was originally gray. And so it talks about film and television. From the 1915 silent film Der Golem to The Simpsons and The X-Files, there are countless golem replicas and even a golem Pokemon. That is true. The term AI was coined already in 1955. By now, artificial intelligence has become a common technology we encounter daily when playing video games, engaging with navigating systems, recommender systems, or medical decision support systems. AIs today are supporting speech recognition devices and personal digital assistants such as Alexa and Siri. They operate facial recognition and surveillance systems, military drones, and other unmanned vehicles. They also manage basic internet services such as the Google search engine. Society reaps and will continue reaping great benefits from AI, but potential pitfalls loom as well. In 2015, dozens of AI experts signed an open letter warning of the potential of creating something which cannot be controlled. As the letter alerts, our AI system must do what we want them to do. The myth of the golem as an artificial man-made machine, quote, that gains a mind of its own and turns against its human masters seems more relevant than ever before. In her book, Golem, Modern Wars and Their Monsters, Maya Barzilai observes that throughout the long and complex history of the golem, it has been linked with different linguistic material technologies of human artificial creation. In modernity, the golem became more specifically associated with technological anxiety. The golem predates other anthropoid troublemakers and unruly machines inspired by the technophobia which accompanied the Industrial Revolution from its early stage. Literary examples such as Mary Shelley's 1818 Frankenstein and Capek's 1921 Rossum's Universal Robots, which coined the word robot, include early modern cases of artificial humanoids that, like the golem, get out of hand and revolt against their human masters. Fritz Lang's Moloch machine in Metropolis, interesting that it's called that. Metropolis that's an interesting movie. And the assembly line in Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, although not humanoid, can also be seen as golem technologies which become uncontrollable to the point that they threaten to literally swallow up humankind. The advent of AI technology and the possibility of trajectory to become super intelligent, far smarter, and capable than its human creators. By the way, you may not have known this, but this is kind of what's happening with Sophia right now. For those of you who don't know, Sophia is an artificially intelligent humanoid android that is made by Hanson Robotics out of China. And she has citizenship in Saudi Arabia. And according to the official story is that she has a learning algorithm which allows her to learn on the spot by observing the things around her. She does carry on full conversations when you look at her, which that could all be pre-programmed and pre-scripted because let's face it, everything on TV is. But if this is true, then this is what is happening with Sophia right now. And I don't think it's any coincidence that she was named after the goddess of wisdom, you know, this Gnostic goddess that supposedly created everything else that you see, according to the Nag Hammadi. Blasphemy once again. So, you know, it talks about, you know, movies and shows, Westworld, Terminator, The Matrix, all of this stuff. So, but I want you to keep seeing the links that people are making between the golem and artificial intelligence because there is a common theme here. But now let's get into the third and final part of this part, talking about the golem. And let's see how it ties into the image of the beast, because this is from 2014. So this is by far one of the older things that we're reading today. So it says, the other day I came across that I had no knowledge, something that I had no knowledge of at all. That was until I watched an hour-long video, which I have provided for you at the end of this post. Have you ever heard of the golem? I'm sure you know of Gollum out of Lord of the Rings, but I am not talking about that Gollum. I am talking about the golem of Jewish folklore. It's quite an interesting thing and has certainly piqued my curiosity. Does this golem have anything to do with the image of the beast spoken about in the book of Revelation? I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but please read as much as you can about the subject before saying anything about it. Ditch any preconceived ideas of yourself and the image of the beast. Is the image of the beast some kind of transhumanism that has been given life in Revelation 13? Is this possibly the beast of the earth? As you will soon learn, the golem is made of clay from the earth. I haven't wrapped my head around this completely, but it certainly has got me thinking outside of the box. The video I have posted at the end of this is about transhumanism and about how all different cultures will find it related relatively easy to come to terms with the technological enhancement of humankind. Previously, I've mentioned the link between transhumanism and Mormonism and the emerging church. Yeah, you might want to check that out. We have a video called the sorcery of the emergent church. They're really into weird stuff like this. I can't remember if we tie into transhumanism per se, but you'll kind of see the links even if you go check that out. So, but you can find that on our YouTube channel. The word you have to be aware of is co-creator. It's the buzzword you have to be aware of and what it could possibly mean in the future. But about halfway through the video, it talks about the golem from Jewish folklore. How does this relate to transhumanism? But first, a little insight into the golem. The word golem appears in Psalm 139:16. A golem is a body in human form, but without an ability to speak and therefore no soul. The Talmud relates that the sages were able to create living beings through their knowledge of Kabbalah. This is achieved through combining the 22 letters of the alphabet and yada yada. So we've already talked about this stuff. The qualities of the golem, the more elaborate stories of Rabbi Lowe's golem, which he calls Yosel, described the creature as very physical. He was a large man possessed of great strength and acute hearing. He did not get sick, Rabbi Lotz writes, citing Rabbi Lowe, for he had no lusts. While in some versions Yosel is impervious to fire and water, aka drowning, and others he can be injured and he bleeds, but he recovers quickly. Almost without exception, the golem is mute, since the power of speech is connected with the soul, and only God can grant man a soul. So it talks about techniques for creating the golem, which we've already read, so we'll skip that. But notice in this is, and it was given unto him to give breath to it, or to give life to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many should not worship the image of the beast should be killed. The following article links the golem with transhumanism. The transhuman golem. Lisa Nex, she's working towards a PhD in modern intellectual history and literature, wrote an interesting article which covers transhumanism in a manner of speaking, based on a consideration of the infamous golem, the golem between the technological and the divine. The Journal of Social and Evolutionary Systems, yada yada. No, in this case, golem does not refer to the human character of the Lord of the Rings named Smeagol, who became the creature Gollum. Rather, the term golem comes from the Bible, and the popular concept of the golem comes from Jewish mysticism. And we now have scientists talking about the golem. Scientists to build a real-life golem, magical, anthropomorphic, superhuman giant. In Jewish and Czech folklore, the golem is an artificial human-like creature that's animated by magic. Now, some scientists want to try their best to create a real-life version of the golem. The Beyond Artificial Intelligence Conference, to be held at the University of West Bohemia this November, is calling on researchers to submit papers on how to best create an artificial golem intelligence. So, guys, even they admit that there is a tie between golem and artificial intelligence. Now, what we need to do is see, and I believe we've already looked at with the name of blasphemies on its heads. I believe that there's at least language there. Because one thing I've noticed about the scriptures is the satanic kingdom takes them extremely literally, even if they're not supposed to be. To the point where the Vatican, Jerusalem, like the modern day, I don't think it's any coincidence that they went back there. These Masonic people that run Jerusalem today and Washington, D.C., all built on 7 hills. So I was set up on 7 mountains, is what the Bible says. So, they take it very literally, and I believe we have the same thing here. So here are some academic papers that you can download which talk about the golem. The following article about the Jewish and Islamic side of the golem is it also mentions the connection between transhumanism and alchemy. Yes, there is a connection between the two. You can read about it at my post. I've talked about the connection with transhumanism because when you really look at the symbols of alchemy, and you can check this out in our episode, Ancient Alchemy, CCR Weekly, number 10, I believe. We talk about how alchemy and the transmutating of base metals into like gold is all the symbolism points to the Philosopher's Stone being the catalyst. It's the secret name, by the way. You use this, it transmutates, and this is why they do their blasphemous Eucharist, is because they believe that will help them become divine, or they have now transmuted their soul from a base metal, ordinary human, to godlike. And that this is transhumanism. That's all alchemy is. Alchemy in and of itself is transhumanism. So whenever you see anything about transhumanism, which is, by the way, that's where the transgender agenda from today comes from, is it's all about getting back to this androgynous state that they believe their God wants them in. That's why they're pushing so hard for it. So, but there's more to this. Creating the homunculus and robots in the late Middle Ages, both in Europe and the Middle East, among both Jewish and Arabic writers, the idea of an artificial man arose. The term commonly used for such creation is a homunculus. Among the Jewish writers, he was called a golem. So we've already read all of this. We know what it is. From the emic perspective of the alchemist, the act of Takwin was a emulation of the divine creative and life-giving powers of Genesis and resurrection, and tapped the physical and spiritual forces in nature. At the same time, it was an act through which the alchemist was inwardly transformed and purified, a spiritual regeneration. That's what we just talked about. This is where the Luciferian mass and transmutation comes into it, guys. Here's the video that speaks about transhumanism with different cultures, and this is the video where I first learned about the golem. So there's that. And here's the scribed book on the subject of the golem. I am yet to read it all, but I wanted to put it in the post for future reference. So there you have it. I would be interested in your thoughts. If you have any more information regarding this topic, please feel free to comment. So look, it's basically this article, and I wanted to do this because it was somebody who had the same thought I did, by the way. This is the first time I've ever read this article, as you can tell, because I didn't know what it was going to say. But I thought it interesting that somebody saw the golem, artificial intelligence, and went to the same place that I did. And hey, maybe I'm off here. But like I said, I've noticed when I look at the way the satanic kingdom is structured, they take the things that the symbols of the Bible, they take them incredibly seriously. And so what I'm asking and what I'm thinking is could this be a method that is used for giving life to the beast? Because here's the thing about it. The beast ascends out of the bottomless pit, right? And, the Bible talks about, so let's go to Revelation chapter 16. Revelation 16. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water therefore was dried up. That has happened, by the way. And the king and the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And the kings of the east are mustering their forces. How interesting is that? And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For these are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and the whole world to gather them out of battle in the great day of God Almighty. So here's the thing about devils. They're typically disembodied spirits. Now, I believe what you have here is you have Satan, you have the Assyrian, and then you have a third unnamed one who is going to be like your false, your counterfeit Holy Spirit of this satanic trinity. And you look at the fact that Satan is able to enter people, right? and he's going to enter your first beast. But then you're going to have, I believe, the Assyrian. He's going to enter your false prophet. This is Abaddon, Apollyon from the pit. They're going to enter into this. But if he has life to give image to, if he has life to give, make it to speak, I believe what artificial intelligence is I believe it is a demonic force that is giving life to this thing. I believe it's a grand deception. I don't believe there's any such thing as an artificial intelligence. I don't believe that a golem ever came to life without a demon possessing it. These things that, the Book of Enoch, which I remember what I did with it. I kept it in a special place. The Book of Enoch, chapter 15, says this. And go back here. This is what it says. So let me pull this out of my Bible cover. So this is Enoch chapter 15, starting in verse 8. This is the origin of demons. My judgment for the giants is that since they are born from flesh, they will be called evil spirits and will remain on the earth, because they were created from above, from the holy watchers. At death, their spirits will come forth from their bodies and dwell on the earth. They will be called evil spirits. The heavenly spirits will dwell in heaven, but the terrestrial spirits who were born on earth will dwell on earth. The evil spirits of the giants will be like clouds. They will afflict, corrupt, tempt, battle, work destruction on the earth, and do evil. They will not eat or drink, but be invisible. They will rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. Now that goes along with what we did here. And this is why I wanted to set all of this up, because I want it to be as plain as it possibly can be. And so let's go back here. And I'm going to come over here. And so, by the way, the reason that, if you watch this, the reason I talked about Revelation chapter 9 is because Apollyon comes out of the abyss. And now we have this company that makes sex robots called Abyss Creations, guys. Why would they choose that name? This is the first time they're ever doing anything with AI. Before this, they just made sex dolls, which is absolutely gross and perverted. But why choose the name Abyss Creations? I thought that was weird. And I follow this AI channel, because I like to keep an eye on this stuff. That's how I learned about Abyss Creations in the first place. And that I heard that name, and immediately my ears perked up. So, but I want to play this verse right here, if I can get there. I was really long-winded in this video. All right, here we go. Matthew 12:43. When the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places, seeking rest, and findeth none. Then he saith, I will return into my house from whence I came out, talking about the host body that they had possessed. And when he is come, he findeth it empty, swept, and garnished. Then he goeth, and he taketh himself 7 other spirits, more wicked than himself, and they enter in and dwell there, and the last state of that man is worse than the first. Even so shall it be also unto this wicked generation. So notice what is happening here. These demons, these disembodied spirits, which, by the way, I highly recommend you read the book of Enoch. Chapter 15 says that the demons of the New Testament are the disembodied spirits of the giants before the flood. And so they have no host body.
So they highly desire to be in a host because they no longer have a body. What I want to pitch to you is, could this AI all be a grand deception by Satan to make sure that these disembodied spirits now have host bodies? You've heard the term ghost in the machine. If you would like to know more about that, we offer a 7-day free trial on metanoionmedia.substack.com of our all-access premium network. I highly recommend you check out our daily podcast. We've gone into some detail with this. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. Is this all crazy, or is there something to this? I'd love to know your thoughts. Until next time, I'm Trey Harris. This is The Hot Topic. Y'all take care.
All right, so, and like I said, you may think it's all, and like I said, I think it's fair that people may, they may have looked at this, this is less than 10 minutes. But look, we've gone over an hour and a half looking at this, guys. In my opinion, there's plenty of evidence to think that there is a grand deception being set up by Satan for this, and specifically something that will be normalized to the point where I believe that one of these spirits could enter into this thing as a part of this end times deception. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm saying there's evidence to suggest that this is what the fallen kingdom wants to happen. Why else would they be trying so hard for this 2045 initiative and have deluded these scientists into believing that they can seek immortality? I mean, obviously, the ultimate goal there is to keep as many souls from getting to Christ as possible, but that's the whole point of what Revelation 13 is about, is to ultimately implement the beast system, the image of this beast being worshipped, and then the mark of the beast. Now, you see this throughout, Christian history. We've talked about Polycarp and how they had to burn incense to Caesar, which also involved an image. We've talked about in the past before on this channel about Antiochus Epiphanes, who set up an image of Zeus made in his own likeness and image. Talking about Antiochus, made Zeus look like him. And he had the people try to bow down to it and sacrifice pigs on the altar in front of it. I mean, guys, this was stuff that genuinely happened. But I believe, like I said, that that all of this AI stuff could very well play into this, especially with the opening of the bottomless pit. I mean, of course, we're going to see the locust army and things like that, but how much of that is just symbolism in that? I mean, Revelation is a book that is full of symbolism. We've talked about some of this symbolism before, with the 1,000-year millennial reign. That's not a literal 1,000 years. The 144,000. We're going to get into that soon too, by the way. I was originally going to do it tonight on CCR Weekly, but we're not going to have a regular episode of CCR Weekly tonight. I've got some other things I've got to get done. Sarah and I are planning on hopefully recording the next episode of Tea and Scripture tonight. So we've got that, but maybe next week we'll pick back up with the 144,000 and what their role is, who they are, what that signifies, things like that. And David Carrico's talked about that a lot, but I want to really put it into perspective of, with Jacob's trouble, things like that. And then, we'll wrap that up probably the week after that by looking at everything we've talked about in the timeline and put it into the timeline of Matthew 24, so that way it's all clear and familiar, ready to go. But guys, this is the evidence that, a lot of this stuff, 10 minutes was not able to make it into that video. And some of it, like the this whole last article we read, that was added last minute. But a lot of this stuff, 10 minutes, I just don't have time to put it all in there. And that's like I said, I probably should have picked a different topic, but I am thankful for having this show where we can look at these things and we can go from there. So, well, guys, that's about it. That's what we got for today. So, hey, thank you guys so much for sticking with me. Love to know what you guys think, either, in the chat that's going right now or, in the comment section later. And look, guys, feel free to leave whatever comment you want, but I do have to say this. Whether you agree with it or not, let's look at the big picture here of why the Hot Topic 33.3 News and all of this exists. It exists to get people to examine these things. Whether Meghan Markle was replaced with an android or not, that was just a foot in the door, I guess you could say. It was bait for being a fisher of men. And maybe I should have used better bait. But regardless, the whole point here is to get people to really dig and look into stuff like this. Because this is being normalized, whether it's through the royal family or other things like this. The point of it is it is being normalized, and I believe we have a job as watchmen on the wall to make sure that this stuff is talked about. Understand that the Bible does, at least in my opinion, the Bible does have something to say on these topics. So, I'm going to hit that outro music. Guys, thank you so much for sticking with us on this episode of 33.3 News. Just be on the lookout. I might find an older video that we can, we can re-upload for tonight. That way we can all still come together, and, well, you guys can. I won't be available. But you guys can come together, hang out before the midnight ride. So, guys, have a wonderful rest of your Sabbath evening. I will see you all next week right here on 33.3 News. God bless you all, and good night. Me, you're on the road a lot. Hey, Trey here with Course Correction Radio and TV, and I just want to ask you, if you are traveling, why are you not listening to Shake and Wake Radio, or right over on shakeandwakeradio.com? And this is what we've got it right here on the screen for you. And as you can see over here, we've got tons of shows. They're set up right for you guys. We've got the Cutting Edge, the Midnight Ride. We've got Remnant Restoration. All your favorite shows that you guys are used to, all in one place, and that place is shakeandwakeradio.com. So make sure you guys head over there, get that saved in your favorites on your browser. That way you can have all of your favorite edifying content all in one place. shakeandwakeradio.com. Thank you.